So I just got done watching She-Hulk episode 2, season 1. Before I get into my thoughts about the episode, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Help us out to 1,000 family members. We already hit 500. There's no reason why we can't double up on them. Thank you guys for your continued support. Now, for me, this episode, in my personal opinion, was very entertaining. I was entertained by it. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Now, I want to get this out the way because these are the things that people are going to talk about anyways, and then I'll get into the other stuff. Yes, the CGI was not great. All right. I can't say that it was worse than the first episode, but I think the lighting conditions in this one kind of expose how cartoony and how like not so great the CGI was. Like this part of the episode when she was in the bar and she was She-Hulk, the darkness kind of exposed how cartoony and cheesy the CGI might look. And when she was like in the courthouse and the background being light, the CGI was so weird that it felt like she was a layer on top of the scene as opposed to being immersed in the scene. So besides that, that's all I can really say about it. I mean, we all knew the CGI wasn't that great anyway, so that's not really news. And for people who don't like wokeness in their TV shows or their movies, if it really bothers you, I'm happy to tell you guys that there isn't that much in this episode, like really any at all, to be honest with you. I'm with you guys. I don't really like those like things are being preached to all the time in episodes, but this episode, if you can find wokeness in here, you would have to like grasp at straws and split hairs and try your hardest to find it because I couldn't see it anywhere. The only part of the episode that I can think of where people might say that it might be wokeness in there is the part where I thought it was hilarious when the guy came up to She-Hulk in the bar and he was like, "How did you get this powers?" And he was like accusing her of nepotism. I forget his name right now. He's accusing her of nepotism with the power, and he's accusing her of gaining these powers from the previous episode during her court case just for publicity. And she was like, "Well, you're the only person who would accuse me of that." But the part that was kind of funny and people might assume is woke is when he's like, stop talking to her. He looks over. He's like, "There's a beautiful woman over there. I'm gonna go talk to it." That's about it. That's all. That's all he said. And if some guys take that as like, "Oh, this is the way they depict men," I'm just like, dude, that's not what that was. To me, this guy is the embodiment of what they call toxic masculinity, scaled to 1,000% of ridiculousness. Like I laughed at it because it was stupid and it was dumb. Like the way he is, it reminds me of those spoof movies that came out back in the day, like Scary Movie, Not Another Teen Movie, Disaster Flick, Dance Flick, like those type of movies where they took a stereotype or some type of thing that like a stereotype of a person and it took it and exaggerated by 1,000% just to make it funny. And I think that's just who he is. Now, if he was the only guy in this film or in the show, I'm sorry, or if he was if this way that this guy is like all the men were like this in the show, then yeah, I would agree with you. But he's the only guy who's like that in this entire show, so I don't look at it that way. It doesn't really bother me like that. In fact, I think it's hilarious, and in fact, I think he has a crush on She-Hulk, and I think we'll find that out later on down the line because he's doing a little bit too much, in my personal opinion, to try to get under her skin. But that's just me. But besides that, there are a couple of parts that I really laughed at. One of them is when Bruce Banner was talking to her on the phone because she was letting him know, like, "Hey, I may pick up Abomination and represent him in court so we can get him out of this prison." And at some point, he was like, "Oh yeah, me and Abomination is cool. Like he wrote me a great haiku, and I told him, the fight that I had with him a long time ago, I'm a whole different person now, literally." And I'm like, "Yo, that." I was like, that's pretty funny. Honestly, Bruce Banner in this show so far, he's been the comedic relief underrated. Like he's underrated in the show so far. The other part where my BS meter just went from here, it just went to do 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 do. I'm like, yo, this is a lot of BS in this part right here. Is when she is actually talking to Abomination. Abomination is like giving her this sad story, like the government gave me this superhero serum and and he was like, "I thought I was gonna be the Incredible Hulk, or I thought I was gonna be Captain America." I'm like, yo, I know she does not believe in this. This is a bunch of BS. Like this remind me of this episode of Reno 911. I don't know if you guys ever saw that show. It was this guy that they were supposed to watch, and he was like a serial killer, and they're supposed to keep him in a room by himself, and one officer at a time is supposed to watch him at a certain amount of hours, and they're supposed to take turns watching this guy. Now, the problem with this guy is that he's so good at talking to people. He's so good with his words. And every time an officer goes in there to watch him, he gives him like this fake sad story, and the officer feels bad for him and eventually takes him out of his cuffs and let him free. And then they have to go right back out there and grab him, bring him back in. The next officer, like let's say that his favorite thing is cars. He'll give him, like, for some reason, this serial killer would have all this knowledge about cars and would start talking to this guy and softening him up and then giving him his sad story about him and his dad when he was kids. And somehow the officer would have the same story, he would feel bad for him too. Let him go. He would go outside. They would go back, go get him, and bring him right back. So I say all that to say that's what this scene reminded me of. There is nothing about this guy that made me believe anything that he was saying. It was all snakish. It has nothing to do with him being an abomination. But the other thing I will say is that I felt like this episode was kind of short. It went by so fast. I don't know if that meant that the episode was good, but it just felt like it went by so fast. But for me, overall, I was entertained by this episode. I didn't see anything wrong with it. The CGI, of course, but outside of that, I can't think of anything really to bash it on. I was entertained by this episode of the show. If you guys watched the episode, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Salute, peace, have a good day.